Ram Ramji, Namaskar, good morning. This is Chaudhary Pawan Sohlot and you are watching Mission IT Education.
Okay, now we get to the final topic of our first module, Introduction to Cybersecurity. And in this topic, we'll cover frameworks and standards of cybersecurity. Final topic is basically about the management level of cybersecurity. Okay, we'll cover this topic in detail in our coming modules, but just to give a basic idea of what it is, what basically it includes and all, let's get into it. So these are the objectives of this topic. Introduction to ISO 27001 and NIST 800. Then we'll talk about what is governance and what is the need of governance. We'll talk about risk assessment. We talk about roles and responsibilities in cybersecurity. So these are the things which we'll be discussing in this topic. Let's get into it. So what is ISO? What is ISO 27001? ISO 27001, which is formally known as ISO bar IEC 27001 2005, is a specification for an information security management system, which is abbreviated as ISMS, Information Security Management System, ISMS. And ISMS is a framework of policies and procedures that includes all legal, physical, technical controls involved in an organization's information risk management process. So basically, it's something which includes policies saying that you should do that, you should not do this, you should do that, all those things. So that's what an ISMS is. Okay, the specification includes details for documentation, management responsibility, internal audits, continual improvement, and corrective and preventive actions. So basically it includes everything. Everything is documented. That's what policy contains. The standard requires cooperation among all sections of an organization. So it's applicable for all sections of the organization, be it any department. The 27001 standard does not mandate specific information security controls, but it provides a checklist of controls that should be considered in the accompanying code of practice. So it should not mandate that this should be used, but it have a checklist that it should be done, it should be done, it should be done. You can implement it in any way. ISO specification planning process. ISO 27001 uses a top-down approach, a risk-based approach, and is technology neutral. So it doesn't include much technology. The specification defines a 6-part planning process. And the 6 parts are: first one, define a security policy. We define a security policy in the first part. Second part is defining the scope of ISMS. Third part is conduct a risk assessment. We conduct a risk assessment for the organization. And fourthly, we manage identified risk. After the risk assessment, we try to manage the identified risk. That's the 4th part. And in 5th part, so we select control objectives and controls to be implemented. And in 6th part, we prepare a statement of applicability. So what all things happens in all these 6 parts, I will not be going into that. I'll not be explaining at this point because it's basically introduction, and because all that thing will be covered in the modules where we'll be covering ISO in detail. For time being, just know that what ISO is. It includes specification, ISMS, what basically it is. That's enough for the time being. Then let's come to NIST 800. The NIST 800 series is a set of documents that describe United States federal government computer security policies, procedures and guidelines. NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, that is what NIST stands for, is a unit of Commerce Department. The documents are available free of charge. You can search for NIST 800 over the internet, you will get it. and can be useful to business and educational institutions as well as to government agencies. You can just go through that. You just Google it up for NIST 800 and just go through that. The publications cover all NIST recommended procedures and criteria for assessing and documenting threats and vulnerabilities and for implementing security measures to minimize the risk of adverse events. So that's what basically NIST covers. It covers all the procedures and criteria for assessing and documenting threats and vulnerabilities, and for also it covers how to implement the security measures to minimize the risk of adverse events. The publications can be useful as guidelines for enforcement of security rules and as legal reference in case of litigation involving security issues. So you can use publications for that purpose. Now let's come to governance. Obviously you can understand what governance, but why governance in cybersecurity? Let's come to that. What is governance? Basically, IT governance is the process by which decisions are made around IT investments. Simple. How decisions are made, who makes the decisions, who is held accountable for that, and how the result of decisions are measured and monitored are all parts of IT governance. So it's more than what governance we thought of, isn't it? Everything, how decisions are made, who makes the decision, who is held accountable for that decision, and how the result of decision are measured and monitored, all parts of IT governance. So based on this definition, everyone has some form of IT governance. You would say that all those things that we do, isn't it? Like you take care of how decision made are, you take care of how it is made, you think while making decisions like how will it affect everything, you do that, isn't it? But unfortunately for many firms, the governance process is ad hoc and informal, isn't it? You all does it informally. We all do it informally. So that's the problem. We need to have a proper plan, like document everything. That's why we cover governance in cybersecurity. There is no consistency across the enterprise. Accountability is weak. If present at all, if accountability is present at all, it would be weak, and there are no formal mechanism to measure and monitor the outcomes of a decision, isn't it? It's just, we would think, yeah, it is there. We can't measure and monitor the outcomes of decision. For that, we need a governance. So why governance? Why do we need a governance, isn't it? That's a question. So essentially, IT governance, what it provides is, it provides a structure for aligning IT strategy with the business strategy. By following a formal framework, though we follow an informal framework of governance, by following a formal framework of governance, organization can produce measurable results towards achieving their strategies and goals. A formal program also takes stakeholders' interest into account, as well as the needs of staff and processes they follow. So basically, governance, when done formally, it covers up everything, it takes care of everything. In the big picture, IT governance is an integral part of overall enterprise governance. Next thing is risk assessment. So risk assessment in cybersecurity. Information security risk assessment are a means of providing management with information required to understand factors that can negatively influence operations and outcomes and make informed judgments concerning the extent of actions needed to risk. So basically we try to figure out what is the extent of risk which something poses to the organization or the company. As reliance on computer system and electronic data has grown, information security risk has joined the array of risks that businesses must manage. So since every business is depending on IT, every business is dealing with this electronics, internet, cyberspace, isn't it? Since every business is dealing with cyberspace, so every business should take into account risk assessment in case of cybersecurity or information security. Now, what does that include? Information security risk assessments include the following elements. It includes identifying and ranking the sensitivity and criticality of the information assets that could be affected should a threat materialize in order to determine which information assets are most critical. So basically, like when a threat happens, what all assets can be affected, all those things are taken care here. Secondly, estimating the likelihood that such threats will materialize based on past information and judgment of knowledgeable individuals. Thirdly, estimating the potential losses or damage that could occur if a threat materializes. So it's just formally we are following up everything. Evaluating the existing security controls, what all exists right now, we have to evaluate that time again and again. Identifying actions to mitigate or reduce the risk. These actions can include implementing new organizational policies and procedures as well as technical or physical controls. And sixth one is documenting the results and developing an action plan. That's simple. Risk assessment should identify risk as part of change management process when assessing whether proposed changes should be approved. So whenever there is a proposed changes, before approving it, risk assessment should be done over that change also. Next is risk assessment to be done on major external change affecting the organization, which may invalidate the conclusions from previous risk assessments. So it does not contradict with the previous risk assessments. Example, changes to relevant legislation and all. And the last one, not the least, is the all risks identified as a part of risk assessment are tagged back to the underlying asset and updated in the asset risk register. Basically, it should be documented. So that was very briefly about risk assessments. We'll sure cover that in upcoming modules in deeply. Next thing is cybersecurity roles and responsibilities. Now, this is just, you might be aware, pretty much aware of these things. Let's to brush it up. I'll be covering it very briefly. Professionals who take responsibility for protecting networks, infrastructure, and computer systems are IT security professionals. That's so weird to talk at this point, isn't it? But that's what cybersecurity roles and responsibilities is. These roles may include system administrator, network security officers, information security engineers, application security engineers, network managers, network engineers, CIO, that is Chief Information Officer, CTO, Chief Technological Officer, Chief Security Officer, Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, Information Assurance Manager, AM, and computer operators. Basically, those are the roles. These are just a few of the primary roles for IT security professionals. More roles are added as new ways to protect against cyber threats evolve. So, responsibilities of IT security professional. What all are the responsibilities of IT security professional? Now, that's simple. Developing and designing a security device and software to ensure that safety of clients or internal products and information, just to design all this. Then managing security measures for information technology system within a network system. Then next responsibility is operating regular inspections of system and network processes for security updates, conducting audit processes for initiating security and safety measures and strategies, customizing access to information as per rules and necessity, maintaining standard information security policy, procedure and services. Just to formally document it up. These are some of the responsibilities of IT security professional. You will be covering this management part deeply. You have a separate module for ISO, NIST 800 and all these roles and responsibilities, assurance, governance. You have a separate module for it itself. So this was just to briefly give it up. So we come to an end of our first module, Introduction to Cybersecurity. I hope you got a brief idea of what cybersecurity is, what cyberspace is, what PT is, what vulnerability assessment is, all those basic terminologies, some malwares, different types of hackers, all those things we covered it up. I hope you now have a basic idea. of anything. Now we'll see a complex and in detailed thing of all those things we have covered in this first module in coming modules. Okay, most of the thing will be hands-on, practical, and okay, so that's it for first module.